welcome back to the Star Wars Stuff Podcast, where we talk all things Star Wars. My name is Colin,
My name's David.
I'm Josh.
and we are here to talk about some theories, some rumors. We are kind of in that break season of where now there's it's not a breakdown of Andor or anything like that. It's just kind of getting ready. It's kind of that kind of quiet season
Our
of
slow period till next year. It's a bunch
mhm.
of previews and cute little things that'll pop up. But I feel like towards the end of this month, we're going to get a few Star Wars trailers.
Yes, I mean, few is maybe like a broad statement. I think
Few is in two.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get one for Mando. Ahsoka is a pipe dream. Skeleton Crew is a pipe dream. I don't know if we will. If we do, I'll be excited. But
I wouldn't doubt like a teaser or something from The Mandalorian. Definitely like a Mandalorian trailer because we've already had a teaser for it. So possibly.
Yeah.
I think Mando's the biggest possibility right now. If you want to talk the other projects, I don't believe until Celebration, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, because what's very interesting is that in March we are gonna have Mando season 3, and then we're gonna have the end of the Bad Batch, and then we're gonna have Jedi Survivor, and then like no joke, a couple of weeks after Jedi Survivor, we're going into Star Wars Celebration, which is crazy. So all that stuff is going to be happening right next to each other, and we're getting Star Wars nonstop. There's not going to be a break for a bit, and we don't even know the release dates of Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, or the Acolyte. Like, we don't know. So honestly, we could have Star Wars like every week, just depending on like how long the episodes of the other shows are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very exciting stuff. The first topic I wanted to talk about was Jedi Survivor, because the actor Cameron Monaghan came out and was talking about live action possibilities. First off, how do you guys feel about him coming into live action? Do you think they'll just add him to Adam, or do you think they'll make his story work? And what is that story going to be?
I don't know. He's probably one of the characters I don't feel needs to be brought into visual media as of just yet. I feel like his stories are self-contained to video game media, and I feel like if you're gonna spend the money on the projects, I feel like we should start bringing in more people from the books versus people from video games. I would love to see him, but I mean, if we want to talk about like characters that should be on screen or should be in some visual form of media to really get the popularity up, I mean, like Vi from Galaxy's Edge is definitely one of those.
Yes.
Where I would say Cal is in such a good position right now. I wouldn't want to basically Ahsoka him. Where it's kind of like the saturation of content for him is just so much. It's kind of like, goodness. But yeah, I mean, I love him as a character. I feel like we could fully get a trilogy of games and be completely happy with that. I feel like that's where they're going with this, is they're going to have a trilogy. And I would be completely happy with that up until maybe in the future where he pops up on screen. He's a bit of a cameo character. I don't know if I want to see a story fully revolve around him in a show, just because I feel like we have a really good one in the game, and I wouldn't want to take away from that. And I don't feel like, why would we take a really good story from the game and then be like, oh, okay, we're going to go and put that somewhere completely different. And I feel like that there's a difference between playing as Cal and running through these missions and exploring and learning all these deep lore about the planets than just putting him on screen and being disconnected from him and kind of just getting force-fed information. Because I feel like the amount of information that comes from Fallen Order wouldn't work in just a TV show, because I feel like it's just too lore dense, where it wouldn't be show, it would be just tell.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm with you on that. Like, I don't want them to make him into a Ahsoka type character where we are relying on him to kind of bridge things because first off, we've already got Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's doing that, and she's getting her own show, and it's like perfect, great. And there's a chance that she's actually going to, which we'll talk about in a bit, but apparently she's going to be crossing over into the Skeleton Crew as well. But I think Cal, you're right, is in a great position, and I don't think that him crossing over like with every other character would be like the best idea because you don't want to overdo a character and like overuse him. And I think that Cal is in a great position in his games where if he ends up making a cameo, fine, but his story is still being told through the games. And I
of
feel like
course.
if we end up seeing him for some reason in Mando season 3, it'd be like, okay, there's a lot of questions. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know like
I'm more okay with a cameo than having his own series as of yet.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know what the year gap was between seeing the last form of Ahsoka on screen versus which came first, seeing her in Mandalorian or the Clone Wars final season.
Okay, so we didn't. So season 7 of the Clone Wars came out before season 2 of Mando, but we knew that she was alive in Rebels.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, especially because of the world between the like of the whole time dimension timey-wimey thing of just all that stuff going on. So we knew that somewhere she was alive, and then at the end of Rebels, you like know that place where like she goes and sees Sabine, that is directly after Return of the Jedi. And we actually see at Celebration, they actually kind of showed a teaser of that, including the actress Sabine, of that scene being recreated, but into live action. So it sounds like they will be recreating that, but it's going to be live action. And then the end of Rebels is like the beginning of Ahsoka. That might be a flashback, could be wrong, but all of that will lead into her show. Now for Cal, I don't know if they're gonna pull a Force Unleashed type situation of where he would end up being a clone or something like that, and that will continue the situation because again, we know this character is not in the original trilogy with the main characters at least, and if he did survive, I would be like, okay, that line that Yoda does say in Return of the Jedi, where he's like, the last of the Jedi you will just kind of be like, okay, well, there's Cal, and then for some reason, if Mace Windu shows up, and I'm like, well, there's Mace Windu, like, who is really the last of the Jedi? Then, like, that doesn't make real sense to me. So I'm hoping that they will make it make sense and not just a throw it on there just to be like, oh, hey, if you love this character, go and play his game. Like, I don't want that. I want it to make sense. But yeah, David, how about you?
Yeah, I totally disagree with everything you guys said. I want him to be in live action. I want him to be a cornerstone of Star Wars. I think when they did the casting of Cameron Monaghan, it almost came with like an unspoken promise that we're going to get him in live action. Yeah. And I love the thing I really love about Star Wars is the connective tissue. And as time has gone on, we've had different forms of media. We've had books, we've had comics, we have video games. And it seems like the live action stuff is the stuff that is the end all be all. That's the stuff that really counts. And I think if we leave Cal Kestis off the live screen and we have an actual actor playing that character, it's like, I don't want him to fall by the wayside. That's
right.
And I think the longer we go with the concept of everything is canon from here on out, it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And I think the whole Jedi Survivor series might end up kind of a casualty of like, well, it didn't fit into our overall story. So yeah, that's kind of like, it doesn't count anymore. Kind of like what they're doing with the books in a way. So I would love to see Cal Kestis in his own series. And there was a rumor that was dropped a few months ago that he did have his own Disney Plus series. And I don't think we've heard anything since then.
Who
but
knows?
I would really love
Yeah.
to bring in that whole kind of era into live action, TV show or films. Films would be great. That would be really awesome to just concentrate on the surviving Jedi. I would love to see something like that, and then intertwine it with the video games. That's the stuff I like really love. It's a challenge, but I think you can pull it off.
Yeah. And we actually have a couple of quotes from him that I'm going to read here. So this is about him possibly coming into live action. He said, "We always had aspirations to do more. So after we finished the first game, I had talked to a few people in the ensuing months. We had a wrap party and talked a tiny bit like what would we want to do if we did a second one. It was all just dependent on what the reaction of it was and how we did and how we did it. But it felt like everyone was already prepping from the start with hopes that we'd be able to do more than that." So he's kind of hinting at live action stuff right there. He also talked about some of the new characters coming into the game and who's playing who. So he said that Deborah Wilson is coming back. We have a new character named, I believe this is how you pronounce it, Bode Akuna, being played by Nosher Dalla, who is wonderful. He is a new ally to Cal, and they have a great dynamic. They're like siblings. They're like brothers in arms who have similar trajectories in their life and have up to this point made some different decisions along the way. But I think they have a mutual respect and understanding for each other. Nosher did an incredible job with his performance and has some pretty show-stopping scenes, so I can't wait for people to see what he does. This is the character in the trailer where he's got the blaster and he flips over Kel's shoulder and like does like a landing, takes out that scout trooper. That's that guy. And then he also Cameron also talks about some of the burning questions like surrounding Jedi Survivor and maybe some answers that some questions that might be answered. So like for example, he said who does his hair, where does he get the ponchos? Yeah, there were a lot of stuff that we want to explore with the character specifically. I wanted to see what it looked like for Cal as he aged and what a number of years of fighting and a desperate situation would look like for the character. How does that change his worldview? How does that change the way he interacts with people? How does it affect his decision making? There were all questions we started to kick around while we were making the first game, and then to be able to explore a mature story with Cal, one I would say is more challenging and darker. And honestly, he like had a lot to say, which is really, really crazy to me. Because this game is coming out in a couple of months. I pre-ordered the game. Josh also pre-ordered the game, but he got something very, very special.
I'd love to do an unboxing on the channel. That'd be very
fun. Yes. And there was only a few that were available, right?
Like, it was limited to 4,000. I believe there's still a few up right now. It does come with a Cal Kestis lightsaber. This is the one from Galaxy's Edge, I believe, with a different piece on the bottom. Which what I would love to do is compare it to the other one from Galaxy's Edge.
And I have that one, so
I want to know
do that.
If it is just a separate bottom piece that's been screwed on.
Yeah.
Or it's something completely different. And I want to know if they make different sounds when they ignite.
Yes,
those are the two major ones I want to say.
Yeah, I'm very, very curious, but that's really exciting that you're getting that, and also is a steel book case as well, and it's got some art in it, right?
Steelbook case. I believe there's a digital art code, and the other codes for the skins.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. We are very excited for that. The game comes out on March
17th.
March 17th. Josh and I will be playing that game. our plan is to
beat it today, hopefully, and then give it a whole review. That will probably be on the Patreon so that we don't actually destroy our listeners' ears immediately.
Yes,
so.
yeah, because I guarantee there will definitely be moments where Josh and I will be like, "Oh my god!" Like where we'll be flipping out. But
I think one of the things majorly with this that I'm very happy that they've done so far, and I really don't want them to mess it up, is they haven't spoiled it yet.
Yes.
And one of the best parts about Star Wars for me is our speculation and try and figure out what is actually going on. See, personally, I'm not the 100% fan of Kenobi, but it was a pleasant surprise having Leia in it, where I had no idea. Whereas the original the original Jedi Fallen Order was just so different and so much new stuff. And I mean, we basically got, it was from the title. You're like, okay, cool. Am I stealthing around? I don't really understand what I'm doing. And then it built a whole new story that was amazing. Whereas this one, again, so much different stuff that I want to know. I'm so interested in. And I really hope that throughout the trailers, they don't end up spoiling it. Because of course we're going to cover every single trailer that pops up.
Yes. Yeah. So no, I mean, it's, and not only that, like that game is coming out, like, but it's the fact that it's also happening the same month that we have the Bad Batch, and we have the third season of Mandalorian. So all that Star Wars stuff is going to be happening at the same time. It's going to be very overwhelming, and we're very, very excited to cover it. We do have a listener that just sent us a very long comment here. They said there is still plenty of time to flesh out a Cal story before we even get to the sequel trilogy, and during this time, he would have to be a secret. It's so possible and a huge disappointment if they don't utilize what happened to be an intentional casting of an age-appropriate and well-known live screen actor. It's on the lines of what David said too. So yeah.
I'm not saying that I don't want it to come. I just say that I want it to come in the future. I want them to finish their arc, which I believe is a trilogy. I want them to finish that arc. Once that's completed, would love to see him in the future. But I just don't want whatever his story is now and what they've planned to be brought down in the fact of, hey, we're going to take that story and we're going to chop it in half, and then half of that story is going to be on screen.
Yes.
I would rather than finish the games and then boom, now he's in somewhere else. We want to hear what comes after this. We want to hear how his story ends or continues towards the future.
Yep. So I want that too. I just wanted to make sense. I just don't want them to be like, hey, here it is, and then not have any explanation. So here's hoping to that, and hopefully we get that soon, because he's such a great character, and you can already tell that he's a fan favorite if so many people were behind if so many people were behind like him coming back for a second game like right away, and we got that within a 3 year span, and that was already the plan. So that was just awesome to me. But yeah, so now jumping to a different to a different era and a new list of characters. We've got Skeleton Crew. We got some news about that. We've got some new aliens. We've got, a couple of different things going on. But the biggest news is apparently there's a character spotted on set that resembles a favorite favorite smuggler of ours, which is Hondo Ohnaka. And this is something that Josh and I have been talking about for a bit, where we would love to see Hondo on screen in Galaxy's Edge and stuff. And having Hondo come in would be a very great first step into getting into that direction. Because maybe at the end of his appearance, it's like, okay, well, I've been thinking of actually starting up a legit business. I don't know where to go. And then maybe someone, maybe names off a couple of planets and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, you know what? I might think about that in the future. So who knows? But Hondo coming live action. What do you all think?
He's a fan favorite character, and I've wondered why they haven't done it sooner.
Yeah.
I mean, Will it be voiced by Tigger? That's the question.
I mean, I would think so. Jim Cummings has come out and said that he loves that character.
Yeah, and I feel like he would love to do something for the show. And I mean, it's a fan favorite character. I don't know why they haven't used him yet. I feel like they're going to do a big cameo. If he's an integral part of the show, I'm going to love it as well. I mean, I'm all for seeing more of Hondo.
I'm just fine with him coming on screen, but honestly, I would be surprised if it was not. It like, all right. So if you go and see, if you go to Smuggler's Run and you see Hondo Pak, like he pops up and he's talking like on the screen, he's telling you the mission, everything. You know that's not Jim Cummings like dressed up as Hondo. That's somebody else entirely. They can just do that for.
Well, I mean, they did it for Cad Bane.
Yeah. So they can definitely do that. That wouldn't be a problem. And the fact that we've already kind of gotten that is like, okay, cool. Now we just need to put that into like a show and more of a live action element, which, Skeleton Crew, the like plot for it is they are going into the unknown regions. They're exploring. It's kind of lost in space. Jude Law is supposed to be this teacher type character. And somehow they also run into Ahsoka as well. That hasn't like the like plot like is kind of there, but like not all the leaks have like said exactly what's happening and stuff like that. But that's really the plot is it's a Star Wars Lost in Space type situation. And when they're traveling, they run into a bunch of different things. Pirates, different aliens, new planets because it's happening in the unknown regions is what it's saying. That's the rumor. But Hondo coming in would not surprise me. I think that would be great because he is such a he is such a very outgoing character. And if Ahsoka, kind of shows up, that would be also kind of funny because in season 5, there was that one episode of where they were, where she was with the younglings, and then they end up getting, attacked by Hondo, and if Ahsoka and like Hondo see each other, and they like see the kids and Jula and everything, then Hondo would be like, "Hey, do you remember that one time a long time ago?" And they would talk about that episode. I think that would be really funny. But yeah, Hondo live action. David, thoughts?
Yeah, it's really surprising that they haven't had Hondo in anything since he's kind of like a huge staple at Galaxy's Edge. I mean, it's one of the most like articulate, complex puppets that they've ever created. And it's like if they spent all that money, and he's kind of like, it almost seems like to me like, I know you guys work there, but he's kind of like the unofficial mascot almost in a way. I mean, he addresses the crowd. Everyone sees him, but I think that people outside of Star Wars have no idea who he is, and maybe think he's just a Galaxy's Edge or a Disneyland, Disney World character. But if and that was a speculation, I think, with the Mandalorian season 1, we thought we were going to see Hondo in that possibly, and nothing ever came of it. Now maybe in Skeleton Crew, I mean, we get him. To me, it's kind of. If you put your marketing hat on, that's kind of late in the game to do that. I mean, it almost seems like Galaxy's Edge might be in some type of possible theoretical transition period, moving away from like the first iteration of what we got with Galaxy's Edge. I don't know. I don't work there. You guys do, so you guys probably know.
I mean, I think that's what we were talking about earlier, how we think that we need to see more of live action of these characters that are in Galaxy's Edge. I feel like
Hondo,
Vi. We haven't really seen those characters, and I feel like they don't get the kind of praise from the average viewer as they deserve.
Yeah.
So it's more than just like avid Star Wars fans who would be like, "Oh, of course, I love these characters," but we don't always have those people. We have people who have never stepped into anything Star Wars, and this is like a whole Star Wars universe. So. Having him on screen live action, don't know why they haven't done it yet. I think it would just completely make everyone going into Galaxy's Edge a lot more engrossed in the world.
I mean, so here's my thing about it. Honestly, I thought they were going to have him show up in the Book of Boba Fett
Mhm.
because Boba and Hondo have history. So I think having him show up in Mando was kind of a pipe dream for me. But for the Book of Boba Fett, that made the most sense to me. I was like, him and Hondo have history. Hondo and his dad Django also had a history as well. So I was like, it makes sense. He would show up in some way. It would fit into the story. Didn't do it. Was disappointed. If he shows up in Skeleton Crew, honestly, that makes sense to me as well because they are exploring uncharted territory. And yes, Hondo is a legitimate businessman, but also he's still a pirate at heart, and I could totally see him like running into some of the main characters and causing problems in some way. And then again, somehow Ahsoka shows up. I don't know how that's gonna work. I just hope they just don't throw her in there just to throw her in there, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, very, very exciting stuff. And we'll also see some new we'll also see some new aliens show up as well, including some familiar ones like Rhodians and kind of those classic original trilogy type creatures, because let's face it, we haven't really gotten like some of those classic alien species from the original trilogy, like since the sequels and stuff. Like there have been like a few, but not many in my opinion. So if we see more of those, that would be really nice.
I wonder who's to blame for that, because you figure like in episode 7 we would have got a bunch of original aliens in the whole Maz Kanata castle sequence, but
yeah,
we got like all brand new, some Macquarie aliens, but no Rhodians, no Weequays, no
nothing.
Yeah.
Like there were the giant mosquitoes. There was the deep there. No, I'm not kidding. Like
I know what you're talking about.
I like saw
yeah.
those. I just was just like, okay, but which I don't even know the name of that species. I was just like, those are giant mosquitoes. They just put them in there and just made a giant bug. And if you watch Mando, Mando season 2, there's also the giant ant in there as well, which I don't think we got the species name of that. But
Dr. Mandible, right?
Right. That was his name, but I don't think
funny.
we got his like alien species though. So curious. But yeah, so there is a lot. Yeah. So I'm very excited for that because it's still gonna have the Star Wars vibe, but apparently it's gonna have that Stranger Things and Lost in Space type vibe as well. Is what they're going for, and it's got Jude Law. We still don't know who the main cast is for that, and I think they're trying to stick like with that until maybe Celebration, and we don't know the release date for it either. All we know is it's coming out next year with Ahsoka and Acolyte and Mando season 3 and all the stuff coming out next year. So. Very, very exciting stuff.
I want to say like Thanksgiving time frame. I think that's when it's going to be released.
When do you think the Acolyte would be then? Because I thought Acolyte would be around Thanksgiving. I don't think that would be.
I think they're further. Well, yeah, that's kind of tough.
I don't know. I'm feeling like the Skeleton Crew would be more of a summer show, and like, because they've got 5 shows coming out next year. And
right. Then, so, but where's Ahsoka going to be? Ahsoka's further along than any of those two.
Oh, true. So Ahsoka could maybe come after.
Do you think
further along as in it's almost done with film, like filming and editing wise, or?
I think Ahsoka's still filming, right? Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know where that fits perfectly. But it is the year of Star Wars projects as comparatively to Marvel projects, because we know Marvel's ramping down with their projects currently right now, which will be an interesting thing in comparison for where Star Wars goes ahead in the future. Because I feel like with all these shows coming out, I like if they're self-contained stories and they're allowed to do different time period pieces. But like, let's say if you're in the Marvel side and you're a 10-year-old kid, like you were from the basis of what, like you got to see the first Avengers when you're very young till like now. But if a kid is born now, they're gonna have to basically reboot the entire series in a way to be able to get all these people on. Whereas I feel like Star Wars is in that bit where it's like they never have to, as long as they keep telling stories throughout a timeline that don't necessarily need to connect into something grand. Which was interesting how we kept talking about, hey, like we're gonna have this end game event where we all go to like Mandalore and try and fight for Mandalore, and I'm kind of like, I would like something like that, but I don't want every single character from a show to come in together to do that, because I'm afraid that we'll get to a point where we're like, you got to watch this show to be able to understand this and this and this, and I'm like, hey, like Andor is really cool because for me it's like it's a self-contained story and it's not needed to enjoy the other original trilogy. As long as these films and shows will complement the movies, I'm okay with that, comparatively to something that's like, I need to watch the show to be able to understand this movie.
Right. Because they're actually doing that with DC, not to kind of go off the rails there. But they are like definitely going in that direction, because they just announced that Henry Cavill will not be coming back as Superman anytime
James
soon.
Gunn said, "Get out."
James Gunn like kind of did like hint at that he might come back in the future, and I think they might be going with a crisis on Infinite Earths type situation, where like once they get to that big like Avengers Endgame like kind of story plot, then that's when they'll bring some of the original actors that play those characters, because Jason Momoa is no longer playing Aquaman after Aquaman, and Ben Affleck has been done for a bit, and we know that Ezra Miller is like,
off the rails.
Yep, and then we know that that Gal Gadot is still there, but they canceled Patty Jenkins, which we'll talk about in a bit too. Is not doing the third Wonder Woman. That movie got scrapped. And James Gunn is trying to reboot it of the whole DC universe, and Marvel's kind of dialing it back. So it's just very interesting because you can tell like the different studios are kind of on the same page, where like they're trying to change of what they've been doing, or they're trying to dial it back. Because for Star Wars, they said Kathleen Kennedy stop announcing projects. So
Chapek, I think, was the one that said that, right? He was. That was like his regime that handed that note down. But what do you guys think are the odds that Henry Cavill appears now in a Star Wars centric thing?
Heavy.
Really?
I genuinely think, because with the whole Witcher situation,
where
he's like, I'm dipping so that we can do like a Superman thing, and he's like, oh, okay, well, if that's not going to treat me right, and DC's not going to treat me right, why not? Like,
and he was at the Avatar premiere.
I would not doubt that someone has approached him already and been like, we'd love you to cameo star in a project. And he would be all over that, because he loves that like nerdy stuff in general.
And see, I think if they did approach him, I think he turned it all down because he figured he was going to be Superman.
Right.
Now that's off the table.
Yeah.
I think that's off the table. The Witcher's off the table. I think James Bond is also off the table for Henry Cavill. So the only two big things are left is the MCU and Star Wars. I think the MCU is more likely.
Yes, because of there's Captain Britain. There's also the character Hyperion, where he could show up in Eternals too, if and when they do that. Because the character Hyperion is a Eternal. So I can see that happening. I mean, but honestly, anywhere that they put Henry Cavill, he is going to shine. Like, he's such a great he's a great actor. He is one of the main reasons why I fell in love with Superman again, because I remember being a kid and I loved Christopher Reeves. I loved Brendan Routh, but Henry Cavill brought a lot to the character. So I was really sad. So I was super happy in October because he made that announcement, like, I'm coming back as Superman. I'm like, all right, let's go. And then last night I saw him post saying,
just
"Yeah,
kidding,
just kidding. I got let go, but I'm still in like good terms with them." But him coming to Star Wars would be really interesting to see where he would be put in. I could see him playing, maybe Darth Malgus from the Old Republic. I could see him playing, some type of dark side character. Yeah, like I know that was kind of like a deep cut like character, but I could see him like playing more of like these like more of a dark side character, because we don't see Henry Cavill play these really see him play the antagonist. So I would love to see him come to Star Wars, but maybe play someone.
See, that's a great actor to get behind. If you decided, hey, let's do that, as I was talking about, a reboot kind of thing, where it doesn't have to be a reboot, but it's like a different time period, which means, hey, we could go back to pre-High Republic. We can go back and grab these like characters that you already know, and we're going to be able to tell these stories from legends and make them our own. And then like, let's headline it with Henry Cavill. Boom. And I feel like people would be all over that. Like all these people playing these big named actors playing these like characters, I feel people would be all over that.
Yes. Yeah, he could be the face of the new kind of era in Star Wars, that it's like way in the past, Old Republic stuff. I mean, that'd be kind of cool. And maybe you don't have to go with like the iconic video game portion of that. You could go into a different kind of part of that and not kind of interrupt all that, what's going on with that, because I believe they have something in the works for Old Republic in that video game and in live action, or the MMO or whatever. But I mean, I think this is actually a pretty good opportunity for them, and I know they got a lot of stuff in the works, so it'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah.
Are you talking about Eclipse with that one? With Star Wars Eclipse? Is that what you're?
No, not necessarily Eclipse.
There's that Ubisoft one as well.
Yeah, the Ubisoft MMO, and I don't think anyone outside of the game studio knows what's going on with Eclipse, really.
I mean, all of us are really into having the High Republic finally come to screen. So I think him being on board with that for a big either movie deal or show deal where we spend many years with these characters in this time period would be amazing. I would love that.
Those animatics for those video games are just incredible.
Man.
And I think at this point they're pretty iconic now. I think if any like fan just sees like those red lightsabers pop up in the darkness, I mean, you automatically know what that is.
That was probably one of my favorite ones, because I just remember seeing them like in the Jedi Temple, and then that line that Darth Malgus says, he's like that we have
from the latest DLC
returned. No,
okay, from the first.
Yeah, and you hear like the theme from episode 3, and then the Jedi and Sith just charge in and fight each other, and I just remember being a kid and being like, why is this not a movie? People would like go to the theater like just to watch this fight. Like, this is incredible. So I would love to see stuff like that. I think Henry Cavill would be a great addition. But jumping the gun again to a different time period is Rogue Squadron. Patty Jenkins is saying that Rogue Squadron is still in active development. And this actually came from her. Here's a quote. She said, I'm not one to talk about private career matters, but I will not allow these rumors to continue. Here are the facts. I originally left Rogue Squadron after a long and productive development process when it came clear it couldn't happen soon enough, and I did not want to delay Wonder Woman 3 any further. When I did, Lucasfilm did ask me to consider coming back to Rogue Squadron after Wonder Woman 3, which I was honored to do so I agreed. They made a new deal with me. In fact, I'm still on it, and that project has been in active development ever since. I don't know if it will happen or not. We never do until the development process is complete, but I look forward to its potential ahead. We really don't know what time period it will take place in or any of that stuff, but how do you guys feel about that project still possibly happening?
I mean, I've been proved wrong before with Andor. I would love to see where it goes. It's not on my top of list where I'm like, I need to see, but it is an interesting take on what Star Wars can be in visual media. And I would be very excited to see how they would film it. I mean, what brings to my head is like Top Gun Maverick, the way they filmed that.
Yep.
And I would love to see shots and new ways of filming for Star Wars. I think that we've talked about it on the podcast before, how we would love to see different directors and see their takes on what Star Wars could be for them. And I mean, hey, it's definitely something, the concept I want to see on screen. I don't necessarily want to see just the story. I would be interested in seeing the visual media as itself.
Yeah. No, I agree. I honestly would be more hyped if they stayed away from the rumor, which they were talking about, where it would kind of be after the sequel trilogy and Oscar Isaac would come back. I would love that, but Rogue Squadrons was a great game series. It was also a great novel as well. And I would love for them to go back into that original trilogy, even though I know we keep going back to it, and it would be great to go into the sequel trilogy era. It'd be great to do that. But I think the original trilogy is like the heart of Star Wars, right? Like that is where it began. If we, do a deep fake Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles and have them be like the main, characters and they do the same adventures like they did in the game, and maybe we get different perspectives of some of the main battles that happened in the original trilogy like they do in the game. That would be awesome to me. And I would also be fine with if they did the sequel era. I just wouldn't want that to be overpowered by what the sequel trilogy became. So I'm just hoping that like I don't know. It's really up in the air for me. Like it just depends on what time era they end up going with. But yeah, David, how about you?
Yeah, I've said since the start of the podcast, since we've been doing podcasts, that I love the space battles. And that's essentially, to me, what Rogue Squadron is. It's just a bunch of space battles, and they're epic. They're awesome. You think about the ending of Rogue One, the space battle there. You think about Return of the Jedi. To have like a whole film or film series of that, that's just like heaven to me. And for all this stuff to go down with DC and Patty Jenkins, she kind of explained that I mean, her statement was primarily about the whole kind of did she or did she not walk away from Wonder Woman. Apparently, she was fired too, just like Henry Cavill. So she's like, okay, well, I'm done with that, but I'm going to go back to Star Wars. But I'm like, no, I don't want you to come back. You already said no to Star Wars. You had Star Wars going for you, and then you walked away from it to do Wonder Woman. Now you want to come back. And I mean, I'm not like the hugest fan of Patty Jenkins either. And to me, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like you wanted to put Star Wars on hold so you could do something else. You just had too much on your plate. So I kind of don't want her to come back, honestly. Yeah. And that Wonder Woman sequel was not great. That movie was kind of scary. I was like, so this is the person that's going to do Rogue Squadron?
Yeah.
But yeah, Rogue Squadron to me could be really, really great. It could be really expensive too, but I do like that idea that you brought up though, Colin, bringing in deep fake Skywalker and Antilles. Maybe not have them as the main characters, but having them there, just like the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
that would be fantastic too. But
yeah, and then they could introduce some new pilots that we never heard of, and maybe have them
I think that's really the intent, to introduce new characters. I would really love to see it based in the original trilogy, and maybe do, if that's successful, maybe do like a series of it, or I mean, there's so much you could do with that stuff. I know it would be insanely expensive if you just do a bunch of CGI stuff.
Yes,
and it would probably have to go to theaters. But I mean, there's ways to do it, man. And the ships, I think, of Star Wars is one of the just enticing factors that I think the franchise has to see those space battles. They're all scientifically inaccurate because there's no like wind resistance or fire in space. But I mean, it's just one of those things. It's one of the,
because I don't think there's any other series that has sci-fi dogfights like Star Wars. Because I mean, I remember even when they did it in Star Trek, and people were like, "Take this out of my Star Trek. I want scientific stuff. That's Star Wars stuff." Like that. It's Star Wars identity where they can do dogfights and people absolutely love them. Whereas I don't know many other sci-fi series that are able to pull off a really good dogfight like Star Wars can. And I mean, like the most iconic scenes from Star Wars have been like Trench Run. We have all these other pieces that like, and even in like the graphic novels and comic series. And it's funny that hasn't come up in Star Wars media yet. So it makes a lot of sense that this was going to be a film, and or wouldn't mind having it as a series. It's just now it's up in the air whether it's, you know, it's in limbo now, and it's okay if it's in limbo. It's just, I feel like the biggest fans are the people who grew up with the original trilogy, who absolutely love the dogfights, absolutely love anything to do with space battles. Whereas people who grew up with the prequel trilogy are all about their lightsaber battles.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very true statement. Because of, I mean, have you guys seen the fan film that came out actually around Star Wars Celebration last year? It's called Star Wars. It's called X-Wing, a Star Wars fan film, and it takes place on Coruscant, and it's just this giant dogfight, like in the actual planet of Coruscant, and it's incredible. If you guys haven't seen that yet, go watch it. It's on YouTube. Just type in Star Wars X-Wing fan film, and it should be the first one that pops up. It takes place in Coruscant. It's like 6 to 10 minutes. And I was worried, like watching it, that like, oh, it's a fan film, like of the graphics aren't going to be that great, but the CGI and everything in it was incredible. I think the only thing that threw me off was probably of the actual people in the X-Wings. That's the only thing that wasn't like, whoa, like
totally polished.
Yeah, but everything in that fan film was amazing. So if you haven't watched that, go see that, and that will get you hyped up about what we're talking about and of what Rogue Squadrons could be. Like that's a fine example of what Rogue Squadrons could be. But yeah, I just want more stuff like that, because there's also the game called Star Wars Squadrons. If you haven't played that, it's a good. I mean, that game is specifically for people who are good in a flight simulator type thing. Because I remember when David and I got that game when it first launched, and that was a process. And the whole time I was playing, I'm like, I wish I had VR, because I think I would enjoy the experience more. But now that it is VR, I think
you got VR, and you can get flight sticks for it as well.
Yep. So I will probably do that in the near future. But yeah, so there's that. And then we also have the news of Sean Levi is working on a Star Wars film. I'm not gonna lie. I was very interested of like, wait, I'm not talking about now, but like way back when, because like I heard his name and I couldn't think of what projects that he did, but then I was, oh my gosh, there was the Adam Project, there's Stranger Things, there's there's Real Steel, and those movies were and show were just like fantastic. So him doing a Star Wars movie to where it kind of like shows that he appreciates like a bunch of past projects. I think he would do great with a Star Wars movie, but I'm just curious of what the plot of it would be and maybe what era. Are you guys familiar with Sean Levi or not really?
I know he's partly kind of. I think he's a producer of Stranger Things, right?
Yes.
And then I think he directed that Taika Waititi, Ryan Reynolds film, right?
Yeah. So
what was it called? The New Guy or something like that?
That was the Free Guy. So
Free Guy. Yeah.
So he did direct a couple of episodes of Stranger Things, and he did direct Free Guy. And
he's going to direct Deadpool 3 now,
and Real Steel, and now he's doing Deadpool 3.
Yeah, it seems like he has a really close relationship with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
but he also was the producer on Arrival, so he definitely has something there to be able to push some deeper themes. I feel like we've had a lot of very flashy things lately. So, I mean, I would love, as soon as we hit Andor, that was a deep theme. So I would love for him to be on a producer role and just fully give that kind of deeper themes towards Star Wars again. So we'll have to see. I mean, with Skeleton Crew, I'm interested in seeing if it's going to be more 80s-ified in the type of filming they're using.
That's what I want. That's honestly what I want.
There's a difference between the feel of 80s and having an 80s period piece.
Yeah.
And what I really need from them is to not lean very hard into the period piece of it being like, it's like you're in the 80s and you're watching Star Wars.
Yeah.
I want them to feel like, yeah, dude, this is like, it's filmed in the same way as it would have been in the 80s. Like you have the coloring in the same way it would have been in the 80s. That's the kind of thing that I think they could bring to Star Wars. That would be amazing to see.
I agree. I 100% agree, because I remember watching the Adam Project and I just was blown away. It was like, this is a fantastic movie. And Free Guy, of course, was amazing. And there actually was a Star Wars reference in there because he because he ends up fighting himself with the lightsaber and actually play the Star Wars theme and everything. So it's that's kind of ironic that he's working on a Star Wars project now. But I am excited about it because all the projects that he's been involved in, I've loved. I'm just curious on what he will bring to the Star Wars plate. But yeah. That really was it. There really wasn't that much news this week. Besides that, again, we're in that kind of quiet break period. So I'm just excited for next year, especially March. That is going to be a great month. And then you go into April and we got Star Wars Celebration, and then you have the other shows coming out. And then you've got Indiana Jones 5, of course, coming out on June 30th. So there's a lot of projects to be excited for. And not just that, like I think next year's a great year to be like a nerd like as well, because you've got the new Harry Potter game coming out. You've got Jedi Survivor, you've got the Super Mario movie, which I was skeptical at first, but now I'm actually kind of excited for it. But there's a lot of movies and shows and stuff coming out next year that look very, very exciting. But for all the Star Wars projects out there, what is the number one Star Wars project that you're excited for? I think I know what Josh's answer is. But David, how about you?
I'm very intrigued by the Skeleton Crew.
Okay.
We don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
And I was going to say earlier, it almost seemed like Lucasfilm or Disney had a mandate of like, we need a Stranger Things type show. Is this going to kind of like be like a Stranger Things? Like,
this is why I think that they should just bring in Spielberg. Like, why not have him come in? You already have deals with him already. Like, just have him come in and then co-write, co-produce. Like, just have him come in, co-direct. Just give him like 2 pointers, and I feel like you could completely improve like the Goonies feel, the Stranger Things.
Yes, I've been saying that, bro.
He gives so much heart to shows in such it can be in a dark world. However, the characters have so much heart that you feel safe in it. And I think that's what they're going for with Skeleton Crew. And I really, really hope that they nail it. It's definitely one of the ones that I want to know more about. Yeah, definitely Acolyte for me is the one I really want to see where they go.
Okay.
That is the one that I am the most hyped for. I want to see where they'll go with a villain story.
That probably is mine as well. I mean, because we know it's going to be taking place at the end of the High Republic, and it will kind of like form into what we see the Jedi Order in the prequel era. And I'm very excited to see that transition. I'm excited for the possibility of Darth Plagueis coming in. That show has a lot of potential. All these shows have a bunch of potential, and I'm just really excited that we are going to explore more of this of the galaxy, of the timelines, and different species. We're getting a lot of like different species and creatures and Jedi Survivor. So that's super exciting. If you guys haven't listened or watched our breakdown of the Jedi Survivor trailer, go and check it out. Josh and I waited during the Game Awards for it to drop, and we like kind of had our live reactions to the trailer as well, which was really funny. So go and check that out. But there's a lot to look forward to. Am I missing anything, guys? No.
Well, you brought up the whole Indiana Jones thing.
Okay. Hang on. If we're doing that, give me a second.
Did he get his hat?
Do we just wait for?
He's been hyping on his hat. He's
totally like stripped down.
He comes back in the jacket, the hat, the whip, the shirt. If he doesn't whip
come
his
back,
mic
oh
off,
guys, I forgot my pants. Let me go back.
I feel we got his hat. There we go.
All right,
It's
Indiana
young
Jones.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones stuff podcast.
I just got this hat. When I got it, I cried. Like this thing is beautiful, bro. It's like it is pristine. It was expensive, but man, I'm so excited. But yeah. So, anyways, Indiana Jones 5 comes out June 30th. It looks amazing. Who's excited?
Is Lucasfilm paying you, Colin?
No. I'm just really, really excited.
He has
about
to keep
it.
Technically,
nice
Disney
things.
is paying you.
He has to keep saying nice things towards anything with Lucasfilm, or they will officially kill off Max Rebo. So, you know.
Oh, yep, yeah. That was something I signed off a long time ago. But yeah, no, I'm really, really excited for the 5th one, and I know I've been honestly like I've been kind of doing like my own kind of study because I bring up Indiana Jones 5, and I see how many people actually say, "Oh, well, I'm not excited because of the Crystal Skull put a bad taste in my mouth," and then I'm just like, "Why?" And they always say aliens, and I'm just like, "All right, Indiana Jones is a character that has faced the wrath of God. He has found the Holy Grail, and he has found magic stones, the Sakara stones that would help a entire town prosper. And then you have not aliens technically, they are beings from a different dimension that happen to look like aliens is like the official description of what Lucas said. But how is that so over the top than him, finding the Ark of the Covenant and drinking from the Holy Grail? Like, how is that, more over the top than that? Because to me, it's just like, okay. And then there's a potential there might be time travel in this new film
and sundials.
Yes, and sundials. But yeah, so I'm excited.
Yeah, what I was leading to saying in regards to Indiana Jones, there's been some rumors out there that not specifically related to anything that we really talk about, but it is Star Wars related because it's Kathleen Kennedy. Apparently, there's rumors out there that she's going to call it a career after Indiana Jones 5 drops.
Oh, man. I thought we were going to talk about like rumors and everything. This is old news, man.
Well, Liam, one of our great patrons, he just put this in. So maybe you can address that.
Okay. So I can So James Mangold, who is directing this film, is very vocal on Twitter, and he's been answering all of the rumors about the test screenings and like everything, and he pretty much like says that like all of that is a lie. Just go and watch the movie. And he like says that to every single person that like says that. So I don't know if he's got like a copy and paste situation on his phone of where he's got it like then, because he just says the same thing almost every time. I mean, I don't think Harrison Ford would come back to this character unless the script was good, and that's actually what he said in the past. So I don't think it's terrible. I don't think he's doing this just for the money, because unlike Star Wars, he likes Indiana Jones a lot more. So I don't think he would come back if the script was, bad. Just saying.
A different, what do we call like the head of Lucasfilm? Like, what is that just called, the head of Lucasfilm? I mean, what's Kathleen Kennedy's position?
President
currently. Okay, president of Lucasfilm. I feel like if she leaves, it will be interesting who they choose to take over, because we know how DC is now completely done and they're all doing James Gunn, and it's all in James Gunn's hands. So it'll be interesting to see who the next person to step up would be. Do you have any ideas of who you would think it would be?
Well, see, I really, really like, we haven't seen the fruits of it, but DC did a thing where they hired James Gunn as the creative head of studio, but then they also hired Peter Safran as the executive part of it. And Kathleen Kennedy is one of the greatest executives of all time, but she doesn't have that partner next to her who's the creative head. So I would love to see something like, if Kathleen Kennedy does retire, they need to find a replacement. I hope they do like the two-person system.
Yeah.
So they could maybe... So the popular kind of knee-jerk answer is put Filoni in there, put Filoni in there. But Filoni is not really an executive producer type. He's a creative type. He knows story. If you vault him all the way to the top and have him as maybe just the creative head, and then have somebody that has a lot of experience, maybe like a known or someone that's been in the business for years and years, like a lot like Peter Safran. I mean, a lot of people don't know who that is, but he is alongside James Gunn at DC. They do something like that. I think that's the best strategy. But we'll see what they do. I hope they don't go super young, super inexperienced. I don't think they... I mean, logic would tell you they wouldn't do that, but more and more that's kind of creeping into my mind that they might actually go that route. Maybe hire someone like a Michelle Rejwan or someone like an understudy to Kathleen Kennedy, maybe, and just vault them up. And it's kind of like, if they do that, we're going to be stuck in the same kind of situation that we're in now. Someone that's not a super fan of Star Wars, someone that can't reason with the very top of Lucasfilm and be like, no, this is what the fans have been asking for. This is what the fans want. We should probably greenlight this and see where we should go, and just have more projects going. Because
because I totally think that right now, as a business person, Kathleen Kennedy is good on the business side. Whereas you have a creative side, and because we now have a new head of the Disney company of itself, I feel like you're going to start seeing the big changes where it's not so much of the money side. Let's go and hit the side of creative. Let's go hit the side of our massive productions. Because as soon as the head of all of Disney changes, all their media is going to change in a different sense. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the next goal is for the future of Star Wars past Kathleen Kennedy. I would love to see a more creative side, bringing in completely new things for me personally. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting towards the future and seeing where these projects stand. As we know, we talk with Squadron. So, I mean, some are going to get canceled, I would assume. Some new projects that were put on the back burner are going to be like, throw them in. That's going to be great. So if she does decide to leave, I would love to see the future of Star Wars.
Yeah, I hope they make the right decision with that, because it's going to be a tough road if they hire someone, I think, that's not creative, that's not a fan of Star Wars, and someone that's, I mean, you figure, I mean, with being the president of Lucasfilm, the CEO, you figure that that's going to be the only thing they concentrate on, and I mean, that's something. And Kathleen Kennedy has said it herself. We want to bring in people that are going to allocate 10 years of their lives to Star Wars. And it seems like at this point in time, all the big creative names, they just kind of really want to stay away. There's a few that do want to play in the Star Wars sandbox, but it's complicated. I oftentimes wonder, is it an issue of just being too much on the inside and not seeing like the forest for the trees, but it's I mean, there's a lot of like slam dunk projects to do, like Old Republic. Everyone wants to see that. Everyone wants to see Bane.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things. Everyone wants to see the space battle movie and Squadrons. I mean, why put that off? That should have been something like, okay, Patty Jenkins said she wants to leave. She's doing another project. Bring in someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people. It's like, and then you could do movie after movie after movie. I mean, this should be like a moving train that never really stops. I mean, there's so many creatives out there, and I don't know whether it's not, if it's just all on Kathleen Kennedy to greenlight everything, or does it go up to the top after her and it stops at Bob Iger, really, because we all know that she reports to the president of Disney or whatever.
Yeah.
But, and like I said, the creative aspect of it all, Iger is a creative. His philosophy is let's focus on the creative, and everything else will take care of itself, which is great. But he's only here for 2 more years. So it's like, what happens after that? So there's kind of a possible super kind of influx, kind of worrisome period. Like, who's going to come in here and shepherd Star Wars for the remainder, for the next 10, 20 years? It's like, I hope it's someone that doesn't just see, okay, Star Wars made $1 billion after The Force Awakens, then another $1 billion after Last Jedi, and then another $1 billion after Rogue One. It's like, I mean, Star Wars, no matter what, is going to make money. I mean, if it's half decent, it's going to make a lot of money. I don't think you can quite just look at that. It's someone like a Bob Iger mentality. You got to look at the creative. You got to look at Dave Filoni. He's been there. He's the mentee of George Lucas. I mean, he's a Padawan of George Lucas. I mean, he's been there. He needs to be put up there at the top, I think. And so we can have that singular type vision that I think the original trilogy had and the prequels had. And then, of course, we got the sequels, which didn't work out so much because I don't think there was a singular vision. There was that whole handoff thing. So I think it's going to be some very kind of unnerving times, I think, for people that kind of think that this type of thing is going to actually, this transition period, I think it's kind of up in the air. It's like, who's going to take it over?
For me, wise, if our old CEO was focused on the financial of Disney, so I feel like the creative project sense was put down, like you were saying, and the fact of now in the future, I believe we're at a point where we will be releasing this cage on Star Wars to what people really want to bring to Star Wars. Because I feel like that was the major reason why people would be like, you know what, I'm going to move on to a completely different project. This is just too hard to stay within budget, too hard to stay within this canon. I'm out. Whereas in the future of Star Wars, all I can really ask and all I can really beg for is that let these directors be creative in this world. Because if you don't, then I don't feel like we're going to progress the story. Right. That doesn't mean, hey, break all the canon, do whatever you want. But this does mean for me personally, it's like, hey, let's make something new.
Yeah, and I think there could be different lanes of Star Wars. Of course, we have our beloved canon. We don't want that to be broken. But, I mean, the Star Wars is a genre. We can have a Force Unleashed series and just make it clear to people this is Force Unleashed. This isn't canon.
So
I
my
think
only
we could
thing
do that.
my only thing with that
That's scary.
is that is scary because people are like the average fan going in is not going to be like this like story is, canon. Why is he not? I mean, because do you remember when Mando season 1 came out and the last Star Wars project that came out was The Last Jedi, right? And people were like, "Wait, where is Finn? Where is Rey? Why like how does this fit into the story?" Clearly there were stormtroopers from the original trilogy and everything in there, but to the average fan going in that's not like a hardcore fan or anything like that, didn't see it that way and they were confused because they didn't know that Mando took place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And they thought because The Last Jedi was the last thing that came out at the time, they like thought that was like a sideshow from the sequel era.
I think they're able to do it. However, it has to be it's a very niche thing that they have to do right. Because with Visions, it works. It's an animated thing and it's separate from the canon. However, they would really have to go hard on making it a separate feature if it is in live action. Because I know that we all know that we are different people than the average crowd. The average crowd will not know the difference if it is in live action. They will think and continue in being like, well, this actually happened. And then you'll have another fan who'll be like, no, that didn't actually happen. It's completely different canon. And I feel like that would just cause confusion that isn't needed unless it's done right. I personally have no idea how you would properly do it, but I believe in the fact that Dave Filoni could completely change up and have a separate canon.
Yeah, I disagree because, I mean, look at Rogue One. Rogue One was released right after The Force Awakens. Average fans went in there and be like, is this Rey? Is this older Rey? It's like, where is everyone that we just saw? It's still made over $1 billion. It's still brought in general audiences. Audiences will figure it out, I think.
I meant like non-canon pieces, like things that aren't like Visions wise, where it's not canon at all.
Mm-hmm.
It just adds fun things to the using the Star Wars story.
Yeah, and I think that's a prime example of them jumping out of canon and doing something like kind of testing the waters. I thought Visions was great. I mean, they're Star Wars stories, very, very tiny stories that, I mean, could have been expanded upon. Some of those stories are really, really good. But like I said, Star Wars is a genre, and I think they don't have to be so precious with just staying in canon all the time. And
yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting because it's definitely a dilemma of it. It's not Marvel where we can say it's multiverse as of yet, because I don't know what towards the future could be. And I feel like a glue piece that really holds Star Wars together for me is that we have an established canon. If it changes in the books wise, we can change it on screen, but it isn't major changes yet. Whereas towards the future, I would love to see that, but I don't know how it's going to fit as of now, because we're still on the beginning phases of being able to have shows that fit into a canon timeline. Don't know where it's going to go from here, though. I would love to see some things that people are allowed to go wild and be like, hey, this person is different, this person is different, and look, this is where we're going with it. Like, I forget, what's the 2 Stormtrooper comic?
Oh, dude, Tag and Bink.
Love
those characters. Love those characters.
Like, that kind of thing sounds like fun if it's not canon, but it fits in a way that's funny.
Right.
Where you could bring in a bit fun comedy element. That makes sense for me. Whereas instead of being like, this is a Jedi, but they're not actually a Jedi, and these different timeline pieces happened. I don't want that. I want cute things that have been put into the story as a joke or as fun that could have happened.
Yeah. Well, do you remember that series that Seth Green and the guys over at Robot Chicken wrote? and they made like 60 something episodes of it, and like each episode was maybe like 5 to 10 minutes long. It took place in and Dex's diner, and the timeline was them getting ready to build like the Death Star, and the animation was goofy. Like I
Star Wars Detours.
Yes, that I will always love that trailer because it's so funny, and clearly it wasn't canon, but that show like was hilarious, and they actually animated and did everything for that entire show, and it's just sitting probably somewhere over at Skywalker Ranch or over at Lucasfilm
it's
headquarters.
just unreleased.
It's
that's
just
the other
unreleased.
thing that needs to change about Star Wars. They have so much unreleased stuff.
Yeah, use it.
Will just pop up all of a sudden and be like, oh my God, this is a bunch of old stuff that we've never seen before. It's like, why are they so like precious with that stuff? It's like, come on, put it as special features, do behind the scenes stuff. James and I actually spoke about it on the Patreon daily episode, that it's a weird thing that Star Wars does. And you see something like the WB, New Line Cinema with Lord of the Rings. I mean, they just showed us pretty much everything, and it was awesome. It's like the most beloved DVD box set of all time, and with me saying all of that stuff, you got to look at the financial aspect. So when Bob Chapek was the CEO, he lost $1 billion in a quarter, right? So money ain't flowing the same way it used to. And it's a tough time for everyone right now in the industry of movie making. And I mean, you're going to have to release more films. You're going to have to make your money back that way, unless you hike up the streaming price to like $30, $50 a month. I mean, there's
turning towards
I don't think people will pay
and
that.
Games. Films and games, like I feel like games is the bigger money winner right now, with the industry completely blowing up.
The game industry makes more money than the film industry. So yes, the game aspect of Star Wars, they have the whole new renamed division, Lucasfilm Games. It's like, there's a lot of money to be made there, that you can recoup it there. But games and films, I mean, they're going to have to put the pedal to the metal. And there are reports that Kathleen Kennedy has mapped out 2025 through 2027, I believe, in films. So I don't know. We shall see. We shall see what happens.
I just remember when they did the investors call and all the projects that she promised, I was blown away by. I was like, really? Like, wow. Like, I just remember doing the live stream after that. And I think everyone was so baffled. And then they did all the stuff for like Marvel, and we were just like, okay. But the fact that she announced Lando and Rangers of the New Republic and just all that stuff, but didn't really, she like announced it, but then just was like, and our next project, and just didn't say anything. And I was just like, wow, like this is going to be busy. And then 2 of those projects like are pretty much not happening. And I know like Lando's like in the, status of could it happen?
Personally, I don't see Lando happening, man.
No,
I don't see it happening at all. And if it does happen, it might not happen with Donald Glover, which would be a real shame, because I think to all of us, even though Solo didn't do that great, he is Lando. It's like you can't really do a Lando show without Donald Glover, unless there's some awesome new up and coming creative actor that can embody that role like Donald Glover did. But
I was about to say, okay, Mason. I mean, how about Billy D. Williams? But all right, he's still there.
Yeah,
he can be the,
he's not getting any younger, Colin.
I know, but they could do they could do the deep fake stuff. They could also, potentially do the, him sitting in the Falcon with the character Jaina from Rise of Skywalker, where like, hey, who are your parents? And then she was like, I have no idea. And he's like, well, how about we find out? Like, maybe he could be telling the story of of his adventures of when he was younger, and then that could kind of maybe segue into,
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, but
Yeah.
I don't think you want to have Billy D. Williams as the star of a Lando
I mean,
show.
not the main character, but
Yeah.
I would still like him part of the project. I mean,
yeah.
He's the OG
that's
Lando.
Totally fine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, seeing the projects towards the future is going to be pretty interesting because, like, let's say if you're talking about financial side, bring in smaller projects or smaller directors and throw things at the wall and see what works. And it doesn't always have to be super, super expensive. Because, I mean, the director of Rogue One, what he used to do before Rogue One, he used to do almost everything on his own. Like, everything. So it would be interesting to see these new directors, new take on Star Wars for a lower budget. I want to see what they could do with that. I feel like, hey, like, let's give them creative liberty as long as we're not giving them as much money. Here's the thing, though. That gives the inherent risk as something that could be not a good Star Wars show. However, I feel like we've already gotten not good Star Wars shows that not like amazing Star Wars shows that have super high budgets. So I feel like towards the future, it's harder to fail if you give someone new a lower budget, but let them do something that they want to do with Star Wars, as opposed to giving them a high budget and then controlling everything and just still not being good.
Yeah, when you said smaller projects, I would love to see them bring to life a different point of view, those books, because they're small, short, compact stories that kind of build off of canon that we've already seen, and that would be awesome to see. But I'm not in charge of Lucasfilm, so I can't
Yeah, but I mean, overall, the future is bright. Like, there's a lot of great stuff coming out next year and in the near future, and we will be here to report it, to talk about it, because that's what we do at the Star Stuff Podcast. I don't know why I just gave a description of what we do, but I did. If you want more exclusive content about, our podcast and just us, doing commentaries and different prizes and everything, go to our Patreon. We are on patreon.com at Star Wars Stuff Podcast 2187. We've got great content on there. We're also on YouTube, which thank you for everyone who's on a YouTube channel right now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We're on Instagram. We always do characters of the week. And you guys are very vocal about that. And I love that. I love our community on there. And for Instagram, it's at Star Stuff Podcast. Twitter, at Stuff Pod. TikTok, go check it out. Search Star Stuff Podcast. We're also... we also have an email. We love hearing from you. We love your feedback. So please go and email us at StarWarsStuffPodcast@gmail.com and give us a review. Going up a podcast, it can be 5 stars. It can be whatever. Just be honest. Let us know, even if it's all about David. I make that joke every week because it's very, very true. Just read the comments. It's hilarious.
Thanks, guys.
And then we're on Facebook, Star Wars Stuff Group, and Star Wars Stuff Podcast page. We also have our own website, stuffpodcastnetwork.com. That also has our sister, our link to our sister podcast, the Marvel Stuff Podcast. Go and check them out. They have great hosts over there. It's fantastic. And then we're on Twitch, SW Stuff 77. I've been playing Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb, of course, because I'm in the Indiana Jones mood right now ever since the trailer came out. So go and check that out. But also look forward to March 17th because Josh and I are going to pull an all-nighter and we're going to be playing the game. Yep. So we're excited about that. And we're just excited for the future of Star Wars. Thank you for everyone that listens to us on Patreon, on Apple Podcast. just on Spotify, just on all the streaming platforms. Thank you for being part of the community. We love you all. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys, and we want to be here for Star Wars. So we're so glad and very lucky to be part of this wonderful community. With that being said, I'm Colin.
I'm David.
I'm Josh.
Wow, that was very, very delayed. May the force be with you.
It was a pause to be able to give emphasis on my name. All right.
Oh, okay. And may the force be with you.